This is Trial Transcripts Exposed by Crime in Court with Heather. Raw courtroom reads with my commentary. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court with Heather. And this is Trial Transcripts Exposed, the defense's case in the Menendez brothers, part 40. And we are on Erik Menendez's direct testimony still. So let us just continue where we were. Um, whoops. So we left off on, we're on December 11th. We left off in the afternoon. They took their afternoon break, and now we're returning back to court. Judge Stanley Weisberg says, "We have everyone here without the jury. Something you wanted to talk about?" Mr. Levin says, "Yes, Your Honor. What I propose to offer as evidence in this case is a document. It's a 3-page essay written by the hand of Lyle Menendez, and it's dated December the 10th, 1982. It is the essay that we had previous discussions on by Mr. Gessler concerning the subpoena of an out-of-state witness being the teacher at Lyle Menendez's school that has written certain notes on this particular essay. Erik Menendez wishes to have this document as evidence in this trial to explain his state of mind as it existed during the last week prior to his parents' death. And the brief chronology of what had occurred with respect to this essay was that Lyle Menendez had indeed confronted Jose Menendez when Erik Menendez was approximately 11 years old, which resulted in Jose Menendez confronting Erik Menendez and accusing him of telling his brother Lyle Menendez, which Erik Menendez did not. Following this particular incident, through various times, as Erik Menendez has already testified, Lyle Menendez would on occasion ask him if things were happening, if things were still happening of a sexual nature between he and his father. During this period of time, Lyle Menendez handed Erik Menendez this document for Erik Menendez to read. Erik Menendez reads this document and forms an opinion, one, that it concerns the theme or a theme that is clear in this document that Lyle Menendez is aware that Erik Menendez is being sexually abused, molested, and terrorized by his father, and that Lyle Menendez, by inference, is in this particular essay having done something extreme with the molester. Erik Menendez forms this opinion, and from this opinion, from reading the essay, and we only offer it for Erik Menendez's state of mind to explain why he did not tell Lyle Menendez earlier the fact that he had been sexually abused by his father, and one of the reasons was based directly on the essay wherein Erik Menendez feared that Lyle Menendez would do this or something extreme. That's the proffer. The court says and he was thinking about this particular letter in August of 1989 or this essay in August of 89? Yes. And what is the people's response? That is the year of the homicides as well. August 20th, 1989, they occurred. The court says, and what is the people's response? Mr. Khan says, "I don't think that an adequate foundation can be laid for the admission of this. I think that the witness already testified that he was shown something by Lyle Menendez and that it caused him to conclude further that, I believe he said, that his brother Lyle Menendez knew that he was being molested, that he reached that conclusion after looking at this particular document. I would submit that the substance of the document is immaterial. He simply said that he read a document and that caused him to reach that conclusion. That testimony is in. That testimony stands on its own at this point. I don't think it's necessary to introduce the document, and I would ask under 352 that the document be excluded because it is more prejudicial than probative because it confuses the issues before the jury and also because there's no proper foundation that can be laid for the admission of the document because Lyle is not going to take the stand. The court says, when you say no foundation can be established, what do you mean? Well, simply that there's no one who can authenticate this document. It is The court says, I thought the offer of proof was that this witness saw it in 1982 and had it in his mind all the way up through August the 20th, 1989, from 82 to 89. Exactly. So just because Lyle wrote it, so they're trying to argue, well, because Lyle wrote it, then he can't authenticate that he wrote it or whatever. But Erik did see the letter and can also testify to it. So they're forgetting that point. So, doesn't that establish a foundation that he saw it in 82 and recognizes the handwriting? Mr. Khan says, I would simply object under 352 grounds in that case. The court says, was this referred to in the first trial testimony, this issue that was so significant? Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, I must admit with all candor, although I read 3,000 pages of the first trial, I cannot answer the court's question. Perhaps Miss Abramson can. She is in a better position. Miss Abramson says it was not referred to in the first trial. This was a document at that time in the possession of counsel for Lyle Menendez, and I did not see it and never discussed it with my client because I never saw it. The court says, but now the offer is that this witness was thinking about it, and this was of paramount importance in his thoughts in 89. Miss Abramson says, I don't think that is being characterized that way. What we found, which is not uncommon with my client in particular over the years, that when we talked about it, if he was shown documents or shown photographs that would trigger certain memories, I didn't have this and I didn't know about this and I never discussed it with him. But he had always talked about the fact that his brother had apparently intervened on his behalf with his father, the fact that he had long suspected that there was molestation going on between his father and brother. So I don't find it necessarily inconsistent when we didn't focus on this particular document because I never saw it. The court says, okay, I'm still trying. Beyond that, trying to focus on what it would prove. I still don't see how it proves anything. Mr. Levin says, well, it would explain Erik Menendez's state of mind with respect to one always believing from 89 or from 82 forward why, at least in his state of mind at understanding the facts, why he would not tell his brother, among other reasons, but this is of critical importance to explain Erik Menendez's state of mind. The court says a state of mind is a state of mind. He does what his state of mind is, or he says what his state of mind is. This doesn't prove his state of mind. Mr. Levin says it corroborates it. The court says it doesn't prove anything. He's saying what his state of mind is. Mr. Levin says it's certainly corroborative of his state of mind. Secondly, the court says, what does it corroborate? Mr. Levin says, because the essay clearly is a story of molestation, of death, of a person killing a molester about a 12-year-old. The court says, whose interpretation is that? Mr. Levin says, I think it's everyone's interpretation who's ever seen the document. The court says, sort of like reading a screenplay and trying to figure out what it means. Mr. Levin says, no, it's about a man who waits his turn on the electric chair. It goes on to talk about this man in the electric chair is there because he helped his I don't need to go into the specific details, but what it discusses is a 12-year-old or 11-year-old child who's being molested and what happened to that particular individual. And the individual that intervenes ended up receiving the death penalty in the thesis of this. I will change your verdict by explaining to you why the person killed the molester. And it was very important to Erik Menendez in understanding what Lyle Menendez would do if he told him that he had been molested. It's an explanation as to why he didn't go to his brother. It's not the only reason, but it is an important reason in his state of mind why he didn't do it. The court says, what would he get out of this letter that he hasn't already said that he thought his brother would do? I don't understand. Really, I don't. The witness says, Barry. I don't know. The court says, I just don't follow what you're saying. Mr. Levin says, oh, Barry is, I believe, Mr. Levin's first name. Duh. Um, the court says, I just don't follow what you're saying. Mr. Levin says, "May I have a moment?" The court says, "Certainly." And Mr. Levin and Erik Menendez confer. Mr. Levin says, "Well, Your Honor, the only thing I can add is there were previous discussions that Erik Menendez had uh, with Lyle Menendez concerning this essay." The court says, "Are you offering those as well?" "Yes," says Mr. Levin. The court says, "What are they?" Mr. Levin says that Lyle Menendez handed Erik Menendez the essay and he explained to him that he was sorry that there wasn't more that he could do, that he couldn't help him, and that further caused Erik Menendez to realize that Lyle Menendez, in essence, knew that his father had been molesting him, or at least felt it, but he wanted Erik Menendez to tell him, which Erik Menendez would not do. The court says, "Okay, this is all back in 1982. "Yes." "All right. Anything further?" Mr. Levin says no. The court says, "All right. The court finds that this is number one, very remote, 1982. Number two, it's in essence hearsay and statements of Lyle Menendez not offered really to prove state of mind of Erik Menendez in 89, but the state of mind possibly of Lyle Menendez in 82, which at this point is not an issue before the jury as far as anything offered by this witness, and therefore the probative value of this evidence is very weak, and the potential for confusion of issues and also to introduce hearsay evidence is great, and the objection on the grounds of hearsay and under section 352 of the evidence code is sustained. So they're not allowed to bring it in. Your Honor, I would like to have the 3-page document nonetheless marked as an exhibit. It will be 363. Thank you. Mr. Gessler says, "I would like to be heard briefly on behalf of Lyle Menendez." The court says yes. Mr. Gessler says, "Even though this goes to Eric's state of mind, as was stated by Mr. Levin, Eric's state of mind is also very important to Lyle's actions on the night of August 20th and the actions which he took relating from those states of mind. Therefore, we're offering this document also for the same reasons as was stated by Mr. Levin, that is, for Eric's state of mind, but I want the court to be aware this is a joint offer for this document." The court says, "I don't see how this document establishes the state of mind of Erik Menendez in any way, quite frankly. It doesn't meet the offer, and the objection is still sustained." All right. Mr. Levin says, "I just want to inform the district attorney of one other issue." The court says, "Sure." Attorneys Levin and Mr. Khan confer. The court says, "Obviously, the issues are different if and when Lyle Menendez testifies, then the whole issue could be revisited." So I guess it wasn't determined yet if Lyle was going to take the stand. So we know now that he didn't uh, because of his communications between him and his girlfriend Jamie Pisarcik back it was after their first trial ended in 93 and somewhere between this trial. So because of the communications he was having with Jamie and with what's his friend's name, the weird the weird long name as Laminia, that guy, he also came forward and said Lyle was asking him to change his testimony for the trial. So because of those instances, Lyle never testified in this trial. But at this point, it's still unsure if Lyle is coming into trial, although they're probably leaning towards not, considering that hiccup that happened because Lyle talked to everyone and everyone outside of uh, or inside when he was inside prison, he would talk to anyone that would talk to him when they were first. He's very social when he was first imprisoned. Mr. Levin says, "All right, we're ready, Your Honor." The court says, "Okay, we'll have the jury out, please." And the jury now is out. So all of that was argument outside the presence of the jury. Court says the jury is back. We'll resume with direct examination. Mr. Levin says, "Mr. Menendez, as of August 1989, had you ever worked regular employment anywhere?" "No." "Had you ever been allowed to work regular employment?" "No." And who was it that prevented you from working? My father. And what did he communicate to you that you were not to work? In what way did he communicate to you that you were not to work? Tennis was my work. It was like a job. He had to live, breathe, sleep, eat, tennis, all of it. Have you ever lived away from home well, at any time in your life? A week or two at summer camp. Have you ever had your own apartment? No. Were you ever allowed to have your own apartment? No. But Lyle was, and at this point, Eric was 18 or just about to be. Was he 18 at the he might have been. I don't know if he was 18 or 7. He was 18 when he was arrested. So he probably was 17 at the time of the crimes. Um, were you ever allowed to have an apartment of your own? No. Had you ever had a checking account? No. Credit cards? No. Was there anything about your life as it existed in August of 1989 that you believed would allow you to be self sufficient, that is, to be able to survive on your own? I don't understand what you mean. Obviously, we get it. He was not given any of the opportunities like Lyle was to go out and live his life freely. I mean, Lyle still had a lot of um, limitations, but he was a lot more free than Eric was, that's for sure. Did you feel that in August of 1989, if you ran away, that you could survive on your own? If I ran away, you mean hiding from my parents? Yes. No. Did you have some idea of what life entailed as of August of 1989? Objection vague. Court says it is vague. That's a very philosophical question. Mr. Levin says, thank you, Your Honor. I knew that. How did you feel your mother would react to having a scandal such as this realized to the family or public? My mother would do anything to keep secrets like these from being released. It had come up before, and she would do anything not to get these secrets out. Or I had gotten lectures from her throughout my life, about this sort of thing. What kind of lectures did you have? Where she would sit me down and talk about what I should say to Aunt Terry, where I put my books, what I discussed about my tennis, what I talked about in terms of training she gave me in tennis. I overheard my mom and my dad yelling one time about the time when dad punched Lyle in the face, about mom not wanting to take Lyle to the doctor for stitches because there would be too many questions asked. Objection. I would object at this point, says Mr. Khan. Called for hearsay, non responsive. The court says sustained, the answer stricken. Why don't you start over again? Mr. Levin says, my question was, how would your mother react to such a scandal? And you said that you had you said you had certain beliefs. What? I want to know what those beliefs were predicated on. He says, my life with my mother, seeing her act in under certain situations that life presented them, that never, under no circumstances, would information that would in any way tarnish the name of the family be released. And we were trained, and our cousins who lived at the house were trained, that we were not supposed to do this. The incident with my mom arguing with my dad about not taking my brother to the doctor because there would be too many questions asked numerous times, things like this came up, in which he got it in there and it didn't get it stricken or objected to, in which from the time I was a little child, I knew when I was left home and I called my Aunt Terry and said that I'm home alone, I'm scared, I got punished for calling my Aunt Terry and answering the phone. And I was told not to answer the phone, not to let people know when I was home, just throughout my life. Really bizarre rules in that household. Now, The conversations that you had with your mother regarding what you should do with certain things in your family, did that cause you to have a certain state of mind about your mother, uh, about how your mother would react to the scandal being released? You mean everything that I've just described? In other times when I saw my mother react, how did it affect how I thought she would react? I'm talking about lectures that you would have with your mother. Yes? Mr. Levin says, I'm not offering the substance of those lectures to prove the truth of the matter asserted, but just to explain Mr. Menendez's state of mind. The court says, well, this has to do with how he felt his mother would react. Mr. Levin says, yes. The court says he's already described how he thought she would react. He's pretty much given you a recitation of the basis for that. Mr. Levin says, very well. Did you believe that your mother had any special abilities with respect to knowing things about your life? Yes. And how would you describe what I characterized as special abilities? I thought she had this extraordinary ability to know things. For a time, I flirted with the idea that she had special powers, so to speak, to put it in childish terms. She knew things that she could not know, and I didn't know how she knew them. I didn't understand how it was that she knew them. She was a mysterious person in things that she would do, so I didn't understand how it was. I thought maybe relatives were feeding her information, and I don't know how to describe it. It was an eerie feeling that I came to understand later. Well, obviously, she was eavesdropping on his conversations. She was spying on him. She was snooping to find out stuff about them. Now, when you say to put it in childish terms, how old were you when you first formed the belief that your mother had these special powers or beliefs? 17. I was 18, 17, 18. And what kind of things was it that your mother knew? She knew when I didn't go to school one day and instead went to train with someone who played tennis. She knew a girl that I liked that I hadn't started dating yet. She would bring up the name and say, who's so and so? And she would have absolutely no way of knowing this information. She knew things about Lyle from when he was at Princeton that Lyle and I had discussed on the phone. Yeah, eavesdropping on that spare line. He talked about it in the last episode. There were receivers in certain spots of the house where you could pick up the phone and you could listen to any of the lines. There were the three lines: Lyle's house to the guest house. Eric had a line, and then the parents had a line. But you could answer any of those lines from some of the locations within the house. So obviously, she was eavesdropping on their conversations. How I did on a certain test before I told her, she would by bringing it up. Just things that she could not know that I thought maybe the relatives were telling her. I didn't know. It was very weird. Were you trying to, at this stage in your life, around 17 or 18 years old, to keep certain things away from your parents that were going on in your life, certain details? I wanted more privacy. Of course he did. He was being monitored 24/7. And were you allowed privacy as you understood your life at 17, 18 years old? No. And what was it that communicated to you that you had no privacy? In what ways was it communicated to you that you had no privacy? God, I can't say the words sometimes. Sorry. From the conversations I had with my dad, in which my dad would want to know every detail of my day and how I would have to write it out for him in terms of things that I ate, every hour I spent, and what I was doing, accounting for my time. From the way my mother would, I remember she came into the room once and I was putting something into my dresser and she reached to see what it was. It was a letter. And I was a younger child, and she wrestled me to the floor and read the letter, just in different ways. So she would just snoop right in front of him. It's not even like snooping, it's just, I'm gonna spy. You are my child, and I have every right to every single detail of your life, apparently. At this time in your life, 17, 18, were you allowed friends? Yes. Yesterday, when you were describing your schedule with respect, Miss Abramson says, not yesterday. Pardon me? Yesterday was Sunday, says Miss Abramson. Mr. Levinson says, oh, okay. Uh, Mr. Levin says, I'll flash back to Friday. When you were describing at your last day on the stand your schedule with respect to tennis and you testified to friends and things like that, were you talking about your life as it existed back in New Jersey? Up until I was 15 and a half, almost 16. Did it somewhat change when you came to California? Of course. Now, going back for a moment to your mother's knowledge of certain things you remember that were private to you, did you, at 17, 18 years old, did you keep diaries? I kept diaries. So she was obviously reading his diaries too. What kind of diaries did you keep? Daily. Sometimes I wasn't too good at dailies, so momentous occasions, weekly certainly, how my life was. I was gloomy at one point, or kept a diary because I moved so many different schools. It was like my friend, my diary was. And so I told it a lot of things. So sad to me. So sad that his diary was like a friend to him. I mean, I get what he means by that, but at the same time, it's sad because he didn't have anyone else he could turn to. He didn't have friends that he could talk to about these things, and it's um and at the same time his mom's snooping and reading his diaries anyway. So everything that he is saying to his diary, she's finding out. Now, when you wrote in your diary, where would you maintain this diary at? In my bedroom. Did you ever notice that your diaries would be missing? Eventually, every one of them showed up missing. And what would you do when you discovered you lost your diary or your diary was missing? Panicked for a few days. Completely searched my room. Think of how I must have taken it to school. Come up with different scenarios of how I must have lost it. He blames himself because he can't even fathom that his mother is doing this. Did anything occur with respect to the events that followed your parents' death that explained to you how it was your mother knew those things about you? Yes, she was. My phone line had a tap on it, and I discovered a tape recorder under her nightstand that was plugged into my line. She was not only listening, she was recording them, recording the conversations, probably to play back to Jose later, or maybe to hold it over their heads, something that they said on a line. I don't know. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, I have a photograph. It was marked Exhibit 259 in the previous trial. I'd ask that it be marked, I think, 364. Court says, yes, 364. Mr. Levin says, Mr. Menendez showing you what's been marked 364. Do you recognize that? Yes. And what is that a photograph of? It's a picture of my parents' bedroom. In Beverly Hills? Yes. And in that photograph, can you see anything that you can identify as being the type of recording device that you say you found? I didn't bring up my glasses, but I can recognize this corner of the box. That's the box I'm talking about. When you say the corner, where are you referring? Under the nightstand, you can see a black recorder. Would you take my pen and perhaps circle it? Eric does so. I'll circle it, small here. There's already a larger circle there. And put your initials next to it. Eric does. Thanks. Did you actually see the recording device hooked up? Yes. What did it look like? It was a tape recorder with a play record button, a normal looking tape recorder with an adapter on it that plugged into the tape recorder, which had a phone line that plugged into a phone jack, and then there were many tapes in her dresser of my conversations and in her bathroom. So wow, she had conversations, tapes and tapes and tapes of recordings in her dresser, in her bathroom, of conversations of Eric's phone calls to friends and to Lyle. Such an invasion of privacy. My mom, I remember she had told me that I don't know why this sticks out, but at some point in my life, when I was young when she had said this, but something about like, well, my mother spied on me and I hated it, so I'll never spy on you girls. And she kept to it. Like she didn't spy on us, she didn't read our diary, she gave us our privacy, she gave us our space, and that was so great. So I can't even imagine how effing betrayed you would feel to walk into your parents' closet and see every single conversation you've ever had recorded on a cassette and all your diaries collected from your room that you thought you lost yourself. What an invasion of privacy. I feel so bad for Eric. Like, it's not even, no matter how horrific and how bad this case is, like, I just don't feel bad enough for him. Like, something about him, I just want to, like, pick him up and hug him. I know he's an adult now, but back when they were like testifying on the stand when we watched through the first trial, that's how I felt. Like he just was a lost soul because he was lost. Both of them were. They didn't really know themselves and they hadn't dealt with the trauma at that point. So it's been many years in the making since that they've worked through their trauma and worked through some of the issues that have the residual effects from the abuse and control of their father. So, anyways, let's move on. So the court says 365. Okay, Mr. Levin wants to mark an envelope. The court says 365. What's inside? Mr. Levin says, "I'm sorry, Your Honor. What's inside the envelope?" Mr. Levin says, "Inside the envelope is an electronic device." Mr. Menendez, would you take a look at the envelope 365, remove the contents, and look at it? He does so. Do you recognize that device? Yes. What do you recognize it to be? It's the adapter that was hooked up onto the tape recorder. You said that there were tapes near the recording device? Near the recording device, inside the dresser, and in my mother's bathroom. And the tapes, were they previously discussed with the jury, the tapes that you listened to, some of them? Yes. Played one for a friend, is that what you're referring to? Yes. Right before the break, we were discussing a rifle or two rifles that were in the house. Is that correct? There were two rifles? Yes. And you testified that you were with your mother when she purchased one of them. Yes. Do you recall approximately when it was that your mother purchased a rifle? It was the summer before, in 1988. Were you actually with her when she bought it? Yeah, it was a Sports Mart across from the Topanga Canyon, the Topanga Mall, and she went to the sporting goods store to pick it up, I guess, and I was walking out of the store with her when she had it. Your Honor, I have what looks like a receipt mounted on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It is already marked Exhibit 61, showing you what's been previously marked as 61. Do you recognize what this is? I've seen it before. When did you see it last? Last trial. Do you identify that as the receipt for the purchase of the gun? It's a different store than I remember it being, but it is the receipt for the rifle. And do you see a date on that particular document? You don't have your glasses, do you? Would June 29th, 1988 be, I'm sorry, June 29th, 1988, that's what he said, be close in time to the time when you were with your mom and she bought the rifle? Oh, there it is. Yes, yes. Did she tell you why she was buying the rifle? Yes. Why did she tell you? What did she tell you she was buying the rifle for? She told me she was going to kill someone. Did she tell you who she was going to kill? No. Was there anybody significant going on, or anything significant going on at that particular time where your mother was extremely upset with any particular person or persons? Yes, I suspected in my own mind what she was talking about. And who do you think she was talking about? Objection calls for hearsay. Mr. Levin says it's offered for the state of mind only, Your Honor. The court says it will be received for the limited purpose of reflecting the state of mind of the witness and for that purpose only. Is that what you're offering it for? Mr. Levin says yes. You may answer the question. The witness says, I don't remember the question. Mr. Levin says, I asked you if something or if anything significant was going on this particular time where your mother was angry, extremely angry at any person or persons and wanted to know who it was your mother was angry with. My mother was still very angry with my father, but especially with Louise, the woman who he'd had an affair, an 8-year affair with. It was a time when she was no longer thinking of taking her own life, but still angry and seething over it. And I thought that's who she was referring to. So he thought she would go take Louise's life, apparently. She didn't discuss it with me, she just made the comment. Hmm, really unhinged. That's an unhinged reason to go out and buy a gun. Like, if you want a rifle or a gun, don't you want it for protection? That should be like your first reason why you want it, not so you could specifically take someone out, but this is the psychopaths Kitty and Jose were talking about here, so whatever. Did your mother, to your knowledge, your personal knowledge, know how to shoot a gun? Yes. And had you ever seen her shoot a gun? Yes. When did you see her shoot a gun? In Pennington, several times when I was in Pennington. What kind of gun was she shooting? I believe it was the other rifle she had in her closet. I just remember her standing on the balcony. There were two balconies in the Pennington home, the top balcony where her master bedroom was, and the longer porch outside the middle floor. And I remember her shooting above the heads of sometimes there were vagrants to the opposite side of the lake to scare them off. You don't just shoot at people to scare them off. Um, okay. I don't even know what to say to that. That is completely irresponsible and reckless. If that's what she was doing, that's insane. And the world is not worse off for not having Kitty and Jose in it. I'll just say that. And I remember her shooting at starlings, the birds that would come, and I think they would hunt the other birds, but she didn't like the starlings, so she would shoot them. So she would shoot at birds and vagrants who would hang out near the lake, apparently. This would be on a one-time basis or more. No, it happened many times. All right. I'd ask you before the break about why you didn't tell Aunt Terry and Uncle Carlos, and I don't think you completely answered the question with respect to Aunt Terry. Why didn't you tell Aunt Terry what was going on in your family in August of 1989? There were a few reasons. One of them was because I thought she was telling things to my mom, and I later learned it was from the recorder. I just didn't think that she would I didn't think for a moment that she would be able to do anything. I had been told all my life not to tell a thing, but I was also suspected in my life that, but I also suspected in my life that she had known things. I didn't know what she knew and what she didn't know. Aunt Terry is a great person, but I didn't know that. I didn't believe that I just didn't believe that she could help. Terry was on your father's side, your father's sister, correct? Yes. What about on your mother's side? Did you feel that, well, Joan Vandermolen is in court today, is she not? Yes. She is your mother's, Kitty Menendez's sister, correct? That's correct. Why couldn't you tell Miss Vandermolen? Same reasons. I just did not believe that there was going to be anyone in my family besides perhaps Papa that could ever stand up to my father and hide us. It was a situation where we told someone there was no question that that my father would kill me, that had he had been throughout his life, that had been firm throughout his life, sorry, that he'd been saying, if you tell anyone, I'll kill you. But once you tell someone and the secret's out, like, is he going to take your life and then just, then he's going to have to admit why he took your life. He's going to, or act suspicious why he took your life. So I don't know if I fully exactly believe that they had planned to take the brothers' lives, but I don't discount it either. I definitely believe that they might have had a backup plan for maybe like a house intrusion or something. You know, they could have made it look like an accident, and and then had the brothers taken out perhaps, and even get a nice insurance settlement out of it. I'm sure that that was a possibility with someone with money and means and connections, that you could do things like that and get away with it. So I definitely think that if Jose had wanted to take their lives, he would have had a whole plan rolled out and been ready to roll it out as soon as he needed to. Um, no one could help him. That had been firm throughout my life. My father had described different ways. I just did not believe that even my Aunt Joan or Aunt Terry or Marta or even my grandmother would permanently hide us from my father and my mother and never tell them where we were and not try to reconcile the situation with them, not realizing how severe the problem was. And it just was a fantasy to think that that would happen. So basically, the fear of going back into the wolves' den was what was stopping him, because even if he told someone, it would only be a very temporary solution. And with Jose's rage and anger, he'd obviously try to hunt him down and find him, and it would be just not a good situation. Where did I leave off? Sorry. It was just a fantasy to think that they would help. Was there a time, talking about the events of the last week, where you and Lyle Menendez decided that you would seek out and purchase guns for protection? Yes. And did you come to that decision? Or when did you come to that decision? On Thursday night. Why did you think that your father would kill you? He had told me all my life that if I did this, he would kill me. He beat me up and he threatened to kill me hundreds of times, maybe more. And he was a man who handled things in drastic, severe, and violent ways. I just felt I knew that he would. What do you mean he would handle things in drastic, violent ways? He had handled things in drastic and severe ways throughout his life. I remember a time when my brother brought home a pet that he didn't want, a rabbit, and my dad didn't want the rabbit in the house. And he told my brother to return the rabbit, and my brother brought the rabbit home from school uh, on school break and wanted the rabbit home, uh, and my brother didn't return it. And so 2 days later, my brother came home and the rabbit was missing. And he went to ask my mom where the rabbit was. And my mom said, "Ask dad." Objection hearsay. Only offered for the state of mind. The court says it will be received just for the purpose of showing this witness's state of mind. Continue, says Mr. Levin. Erik says he asked mom where the rabbit was, and she said, ask dad, and I think dad was in the garage. I don't remember. And dad said, go look in the garbage. And the rabbit's head was crushed, and he had crushed the head and killed the rabbit, and we buried the rabbit, and Lyle brought all the animals, and we buried the rabbit. There was another time with a bird when my dad didn't want mom would sometimes, not the starlings, but the birds that would hit the window, she would care for and try to nurture them back to health. This one bird, she had a cage and she had to leave the lights on for the bird, and my dad didn't want the lights to stay on the electricity all night. So during the night, he broke the bird's neck. And that was just one of the drastic measures that my dad over his life when he wanted a situation solved. That one got out, and my grandmother found out there was a big fiasco and there was a secret getting out. There were things like that throughout my life that were taught to me very clearly that my dad had handled things the way that he wanted and with just overwhelming force. He's a complete monster. Disgusting. Mr. Levin says, "When you were at Calabasas High School, did you have a problem with a gang at one time?" Yeah, I got into a fight with a gang at one point. What happened? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, why is this being offered? Mr. Levin says, was your father involved in any way with respect to this particular gang incident? Yes. And did you make your father aware of what had happened to you with respect to this gang in Calabasas? Yes. And was this another example of how your father dealt with situations? Yes. Briefly, what happened with respect to the gang incident in Calabasas? A gang was coming over, had a problem with a kid in my school, and was walking by the tennis courts, and I was playing tennis on the tennis team, and they were banging on the car doors, and there was a verbal altercation. I was telling them to get away from the cars, and they were making comments and jokes, and eventually I walked outside the fence. They had spit on a friend of mine named Craig, and that's Signorelli probably, and I told him to apologize to Craig, and he said, say it to my face. I made the mistake of walking up to his face to say it to him, and he hit me, and all the gang jumped in. Basically, I got pretty beat up. I wanted to report it to the police. I was taken to the hospital, and my dad said, don't report it to the police. And I wanted to report the incident, and he said, real men don't handle things through the police. If the gangs are a problem, I'll take care of them. They will never cause you a problem again. I thought what he was saying is he would take care of the gang members, either kill them or severely injure them, or to where they would never cause any problems again. I remember he had gotten security for the house at that point, just the way my dad handled things. What about with respect to you throughout your life? More specifically, or more directly, what did your dad tell you he would do to you if you told anyone about the fact that he was molesting you? Told me he would kill me. Under no uncertain terms, he would kill me, anyone I told. He threatened my dog, Velvet, described different ways in which he'd do it. I learned very clearly that that was a secret. He would he would kill to keep silent. I can't read, sorry. And how, Mr. Menendez, did your father tell you he would kill you? He told me he would tie me to a chair, talked about smashing my skull. He just, in graphic ways. With respect to Thursday, when the decision had been made to purchase guns, did you make a specific decision about where you would go to buy guns? No. Did you make a decision what kind of guns you would buy? Just a handgun that I could keep on me. Had you decided when you would buy guns? The next morning. Now that night you slept in the guest house? Yes. Did you have any nightmares? Yes. Objection irrelevant. Overruled. Do you remember the nightmare that you had that Thursday? It was about the green face and Dad attacking me. Same nightmare. A different variation of the same nightmare that I had generally. Remember, he had a recurring nightmare that was this green face of his dad's that was always trying to harm him in some way. Were you afraid when you went to bed on Thursday? Yes. Were you afraid when you got up Friday morning? Not really, not consciously. I got up and it was a new day, and I sort of wanted to pretend that what had happened was part of my bad nightmare, and no, not at first. What did you do? Or what do you recall doing the first thing Friday when you woke up? We're talking about August 18th, 1989. Yes, I put on some shorts, went outside, and began practicing my serve, playing tennis out in the tennis court. I remember the birds were chirping. It was a sunny day, and it was just everything seemed like a bad nightmare. It was a normal summer day with the breeze, and I just wanted to relax and play tennis. Did you see either your mother or your father that morning? No. Did you see your brother Lyle Menendez that morning? Eventually, he came out of the guest house and came over to the tennis court. Did you have a conversation with Lyle at that time? Yeah, I walked over to the side of the court where Lyle was, and he asked me if I was ready to go, and I said no, I don't have time. I've got a tournament coming up and need to prepare for and practice for, and that I didn't have time to go. Was there a further discussion with Lyle Menendez at that time? He told me that, that he understood that this wasn't something I wanted to deal with and that it was nice to pretend that it was something that would just go away, but this was a serious problem and that there was a lot of danger and that we needed to go. And I agreed and we left. When you said you agreed and you left, where was it that you intended to go? Just to a gun store or sporting goods store. Eventually, we went over to Santa Monica, I believe. Did you eventually go to a gun store somewhere in Santa Monica? Yeah, I believe it's the Big Five where we went. Do you have a clear recollection of exactly what store you went to? I know it was a store on Santa Monica Boulevard within a block of the freeway, and I remember the guns in the case and the rifles and so on uh, behind it. So you have a specific positive recollection that it was a Big Five store. I thought I did. I've always thought that it was a Big Five. And when you entered this store that you thought was a Big Five, did you see what you believed to be guns? Yes. Did you look at them? Yes. And in what manner did you look at them? Through the glass. They were on the top of the glass counter. Would you describe the glass counter that you saw? It was a several tier glass container with the guns. There was ammunition in the back. I don't remember seeing any revolvers. There was crossbows, there were rifles and shotguns. Do you know the difference between a revolver and an automatic or semi-automatic? Only that one has a barrel and one doesn't. When you say barrel, what are you referring to? What are you thinking about? You see the old Western films where everyone has a barrel that rolls around. A cylinder? A cylinder. When you say the other one does not, what do you mean? It's a handgun that does not have a cylinder. What experience or familiarity, Mr. Menendez, had you had with any kind of gun as of this particular day? No experience. Had you ever fired a revolver before? No. Had you ever fired a semi-automatic handgun before? No. Have you ever fired a rifle before? No. Have you ever fired a shotgun before? No. Do you remember having a discussion with an employee at this store that you thought was a Big Five? Yes. What discussion do you remember having? I remember asking him if one of the guns in the case was a real gun. He told me that it wasn't, and I remember having a discussion about the fact that I needed a handgun that day. I thought he told me that the other guns were real, or a recollection that other ones were real, and generally discussing with him that he could not buy a handgun in a single day, that you needed to wait 2 weeks to purchase one. Do you remember specifically ever handling one of these guns from the case? No, I never handled them. Did you ever have a discussion with this person wherein he told you every gun in the case was real? No. Did you assume that they were real? Objection leading. Sustained. What was your state of mind with respect to the guns that you saw in the case, Mr. Menendez? I thought that some were real and some were not real. I don't remember whether he told me they were real or whether they weren't. I had thought that he told me in some manner. I thought that some were real and some weren't. Did you have a discussion, nonetheless, with this particular person about your ability to immediately purchase a handgun? Yes. What was that discussion, or how did it go? It was a discussion where I said I needed a handgun today. When I say I don't remember whether it was Lyle or myself talking, but this is what we were saying. And he was saying that you can't purchase a handgun over the counter, that they need to do a background check on you. And he said that it takes 2 weeks in California. How long? Did you eventually leave that store? He also wanted me, or he also told me that the rifles and shotguns you could purchase over the counter. When you said that you pointed behind you, why did you just do that? I remember the man saying that the guns were behind him and the rifles and the shotgun, the counter was in front of him. The rifles and shotguns were in racks behind him? Yes. And he pointed to them. Yes. How long were you in that store? 10 minutes. And did you leave after 10 minutes? Yes. Where did you go? We weren't sure what to do. Our idea of getting a handgun hadn't worked, so I remember we were on Ocean Boulevard or Ocean Avenue at one point in Santa Monica, and at some point, Lyle or myself, I think it was Lyle, said, let's just drive down to San Diego, or he had been down there before, and he had nothing to do with that, and we wanted to stay away. Did you have a specific purpose in mind with respect to the trip to San Diego? No. Why was it again that you wanted to go, or why you did go to San Diego? Correct. Correct? Yes. Why was it that you went to San Diego? No reason in particular. I had only been down there once when I was 12 playing in a tournament. Lyle had been down there before. We decided to drive down there. We didn't want to go back to the house. I didn't want to stay at the house. My dad often dropped by from work. We just wanted to stay out and talk about what we were doing. What time exactly was it? Or sorry, what time approximately? My God, I cannot say the words that I see on the page. Let's try this again. What time approximately was it that you decided to head down to San Diego? I don't remember. It was sometime within an hour to an hour and a half after the gun store, sometime within that. I remember we went towards Santa Monica. I remember we were on Ocean Boulevard. I don't remember if we actually drove on Pacific Coast Highway at the beach, but we continued driving that way. And at some point, we decided to head down. How long would you say it took you to drive from Los Angeles to San Diego? I don't remember. 2 hours? Who drove? My brother. And what car were you in? My Ford Escort. During the trip to San Diego, did you and your brothers discuss anything? We discussed a lot of things. And what specifically did you talk about? Lyle wanted to know more of the details of what had happened with my father and I. I told him about some more things that my father had done, what it actually involved, leaving out certain portions that I didn't want to talk about. I told him that it was mostly oral. I told him about the knife incident. I told him about many of the threats and was more candid with him about and told him I didn't want to tell him these things before. I remember Lyle's reaction to that and getting angry with me on the way down and telling me, why hadn't I told you these things to Lyle before? Why hadn't I told Lyle about the extent of Dad's violence in terms of telling Lyle? I remember telling him that I was sorry and that I didn't want him to abandon me. He told me about, in vague terms, some of the things that had happened with him and Dad, that it had also happened to him for a period in his childhood. Why did you decide at this time during your trip to San Diego to now, for the first time, tell Lyle Menendez the specific nature of the sexual activity between you and your father? It was after the blow up. Excuse me. It was after the blow up on Thursday. and he wanted to know more information. Sorry, I had a cough. He wanted to know more information to gauge what was happening. I mean, I was sure that mom and dad, that my water went down the wrong way, if you can't tell, and now I'm like choking on it. He wanted to know more to gauge what was happening. I mean, I was sure that mom and dad were going to go or were going to do something. It was just a matter of when and how. And he wanted to know more information, and I was telling him I was crying at points, and it was a very emotional talk for about 2 hours on the way down there. How would you describe why? I don't know. I'm sorry, have you finished? Yes. How would you describe your emotional condition during this trip to San Diego? Painful issues, so I was distraught several times down. Lyle got angry once. Lyle got scared at one point when we were almost down there. Emotions fluctuated. Hold on, I gotta turn the fan on. I'm boiling. I still get, I've been having issues with my health. I think I have POTS now on top of everything else that I have, FYI, and been having like these hot flashes. It's not premenopause. My doctor ruled that out. It's like I get my heart rate just goes up, goes real fast. Get real warm. So it's not fun. All right. Sorry about that. Painful issues, he said. Lyle got scared at one point when we were almost down there. Emotions fluctuated. You said before that Lyle Menendez expressed a reaction to what you told him. What was that reaction? More anxiety or anger that I hadn't been more forthright with him about. And just saying what I had told him on Tuesday and Wednesday, that dad is not going to be too happy about this. I didn't tell him, hey, Lyle, dad's going to kill you. He thought I should have told him more, that I should have told him more of dad's violence and more of what was happening to give him a better, maybe he would have approached the situation differently. So he was upset with me about that and also frightened that he kept calling them sick secrets. And I kept telling him that it was a problem. And he was saying that now you understand more why dad is acting the way he did. In your opinion, was Lyle Menendez afraid? Objection calls for speculation. Sustained. Was there anything about Lyle Menendez's reaction to what you were telling him that caused you to be more afraid? Yes. And what was that? His hyper anxiety in terms of he got very. I always look to Lyle in terms of he's afraid and how to gauge the situation, and he knew dad better, and the way he was reacting and how he was expressing, how he thought that it was. I don't know the words to describe it. His face went more pale. He got more angry at me. He was speaking a lot quicker. He just became more scared of dad, what dad would do to keep to keep things quiet, and thought surely that dad would go to drastic extents, and it scared me because I thought he knew dad better than I did. Although I knew my dad better on this issue, he was way closer to dad and understood dad more. And if Lyle felt this way, he was right, just made things more real. So originally, he only told Lyle dad's doing it again, but he didn't tell him the extent of it. He didn't tell him how violent their father could be and how much he threatened Erik about it. So that part was starting to be revealed. And of course, anyone with a brain is going to be scared of Jose after approaching him about it. You had indicated before that you believed that Lyle Menendez had somewhat of a different relationship with Jose Menendez, your father, than you did. He did. How about your mother? Did Lyle Menendez have somewhat of a different relationship with your mother than you did? Yes. And what relationship did they have? A very strange relationship. Were there things that occurred throughout for throughout your life that caused you to come to the conclusion that Lyle Menendez and your mother had a very strange relationship different from yours? Yes. Can you relate any of those incidents to which you have some personal knowledge? Yes, my mother had a tendency to explode, get depressed, and then explode. And oftentimes she would explode at Lyle. If I had done something wrong, she'd still often explode at Lyle. And I remember one time when they were in the bedroom and I was in the doorway, and she would say to Lyle, "You don't understand," and touch his face very gently and then start screaming at him. I remember a time when she was cutting something on the kitchen table and Lyle called her and she cut herself. And she started chasing Lyle around the house and got him up against the window pane and smeared blood on his face and said, "Look what you did to me." And there were times when she used to wash Lyle in the bathroom. The way she reacted to Lyle's girlfriends was very different than mine. She didn't want Lyle to have a girlfriend. She was pushing girlfriends on me. She was at times more, not more loving, but I don't know another word for loving, but not intimate, but at times different, and at times much more vengeful or spiteful towards Lyle. The spectrum was much broader. I remember walking into the room and she was yelling at him, and I heard just the screaming, and Lyle was down on his knees and she was flailing at him, and she was in one of her rages, and Lyle was hurt, and she'd suddenly stop and say, "Oh, I've hurt you." And then I remember Lyle was crying, and then she'd start hitting him again. And it was a relationship I did not understand and didn't want to get involved with in terms of interfering. Yeah, it sounds like a really messed up relationship. Now, are these typical examples which illustrate the life between Lyle Menendez and your mother as you saw it? Those are typical examples. I don't know if they fully illustrate the life between my brother and mother. It was 18 years long, and these are just few examples of many that happened like that. Was Lyle Menendez a bedwetter? Yes. How do you know that? Because I remember my mom putting the sheets in the middle of the dinner table so that when my dad got home, he would see Lyle's wet bed. She would rub the sheets in my brother's face and say, "You know, you're wetting your bed. You're not supposed to wet your bed. You're just a sissy." And my dad would explode at him and say, "You're just being like Erik, although I didn't wet my bed. Lyle did." She used to talk about it in terms excuse you. I don't know if you heard that. That was my dog. She wants her blanket. So excuse me for 1 second. Gotta pause. All right. Sorry about that. I had to readjust and get her under her blanket. All right. So yes, Lyle did wet the bed. Erik did not. Bedwetting is a sign of for young children sometimes of a possible abuse or something trauma going on. So it doesn't surprise me that he did, but they didn't make it any better by rubbing the sheets in his face and yelling at him for it. They were the cause of it, and they made it even worse, I'm sure, by yelling at him. She used to talk about it in terms of if anyone found out, how embarrassing it would be and how shameful it would be that Lyle wet his bed. I remember one time, objection calls for narrative, no question pending. The court says yes, it does. Objection sustained. How old was Lyle Menendez as a bedwetter? Objection irrelevant. Sustained. Mr. Levin says, these strike that. Did your mother ever indicate to you in your presence anything about her wanting children, you and Lyle Menendez? Objection irrelevant, calls for hearsay. Sustained. Your Honor, I'm offering it for the state of mind only. And what state of mind is this? Concerning his belief with respect to what his parents would do and how they felt about him. You're saying this is reflecting his state of mind in August of 1989? Yes. Overruled. Had there been things that your mother said to you and your brother Lyle throughout your lives that caused you to fear her with respect to how she viewed you and your brother Lyle Menendez? Yes. What kind of things did she say? Mr. Khan says again, I would object on the grounds of relevancy unless it's limited to August of 1989. The court says, well, the state of mind you're referring to is in 89. Mr. Levin says, yes. Okay, then objection overruled. She would, in her rages, even when she wasn't, sometimes one of her common sayings, things that she said a lot, I hate you, I wish you were never born. She talked about how my dad had given her an ultimatum that she wanted to be a hostess and she had to quit her job and all of her visits with Lyle when she got pregnant. When she got pregnant with Lyle, she said that Lyle's birth was a mistake. I remember her talking to Diane, one of my cousins, and she said that she told Diane not to have children and to get an abortion when Diane, I guess Diane was pregnant at the time. She said children drive a wedge between a husband and a wife. She just would explode with these comments when she was angry generally at Lyle and say these things towards Lyle. And later in life, I found out from conversations with dad and so on that ultimatum was true and the birth was by accident. And Mr. Levin says, now, during this trip to San Diego, you had indicated that Lyle Menendez told you things that had happened to him. Yes. By whom? By my father. What did he tell you? Objection calls for hearsay. 352. Court says sustained. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, I'm offering it for the state of mind. Court says, what state of mind is at issue at this point? Mr. Levin says, the state of mind, let me move on, Your Honor, and I'll go to a different area. Do you recall approximately what time it was that you got to San Diego? If you recall, generally, was it afternoon, evening? It was daylight. It was in the early afternoon. Had you had lunch yet? No. Did you go somewhere when you first got to San Diego? Yes. And where did you go? We went to a gun store. At that point, after I finished telling Lyle about things that were happening with Dad and Lyle understood the threats that Dad had laid, he decided he wanted to check out other guns, other possibilities for guns, and we checked to see about the rifles and the shotguns, and we got off the freeway, and I don't remember what town we got off the freeway in. I don't even remember how we specifically got to the gun store, if we looked it up or whether we just saw it on the side street, but we eventually sent to a gun store in San Diego. We eventually went? I don't know. So you have a specific recollection of what town you were in when you went to the gun store. It was near the store where we eventually bought the guns, but I don't know what town it was in. But it was a different store in a different town? No, I think it was a different store, but I don't think it was I don't think it was a different town. I don't know what you mean by town or city. Well, how familiar were you with the environs of San Diego? I'm not familiar. Did you enter the store? Yes. And what did you do when you went inside? I talked to the man. There was a man behind the counter, and it was a wooden store, wood like, except for smaller boards, and we discussed options for guns. Did you see guns inside the store? There were guns everywhere. There were rifles and shotguns and every different type of handgun you could imagine. And he was just talking in general. We told him that we needed it for uh, what we needed it for, and so on. Did you talk about handguns at all in that store? Talked about handguns again, and he said that you did need a 2-week waiting period. And he showed us shotguns and took it apart and explained it to us in some detail and said that we could get those rifles over the counter. Did you tell this person for what purpose you wanted a gun? Yes. And what did you tell him? Just for home protection, burglars, things of that sort. And did he show you or recommend a specific weapon to you? Yes. What was that? It was a shotgun. Do you know what type it was? No idea. Did you purchase that shotgun? No, we didn't. Why not? We asked him for a smaller type of gun. I remember when we were in the store in Los Angeles, we didn't even seriously entertain the possibility of getting a rifle or a shotgun because, well, why not? Because this was something that we wanted to have in an immediate sense if there was danger in the house. And I mean, I wasn't going to be walking around in a trench coat, and there wasn't much I could do with a gun in my mind. I really thought leaving the store in Los Angeles that there wasn't going to be an alternative. There was no sense of having a knife, and the crossbows were there. So down in San Diego, we asked him for a smaller type, something smaller, and he said there wasn't anything smaller. So eventually we said we would take it. You would take what? We would buy the gun. And did you buy it? No. Why not? He told me that he needed to see a California identification or driver's license, and I looked at Lyle, he looked at me, and we went away from the counter. I told him, I didn't have my license and his license was suspended. Told him I had Donovan's license and that I can use it. But we thought that it was a little bit suspicious that we thought it was a bit suspicious that right as he said, I need identification, we sort of went away from the counter and talked to each other quietly. So we decided to leave the store because it wasn't my identification, and if he started questioning me on it, then I wouldn't be able to answer the questions. Why, on August the 18th, 1989, didn't you have a valid driver's license, Mr. Menendez? I had lost my wallet earlier in the spring and lost my driver's license with it. Did you have a valid driver's license from the state of California in any event in August of 89 in terms of on paper? Yes. Well, then yes. And you said that you had the identification of Donovan Goudreau. Yes. How was it that that you came to obtain the identification of Donovan Goudreau? Lyle, or my Aunt Terry, gave me, it may have been Lyle, it might have been Terry, gave it to me in May of 1989 in Princeton when I was out there. Just to back up a second, when was it that you lost your license? I don't know. I think it was April. It might have been March. Could have been May. Of what year? 89. Now, with respect to Donovan Goudreau, had he given you permission to use his license? I had used it before to get into a nightclub, and he had given it to me to use before. Why, or did you use Donovan Goudreau, or why didn't you use Donovan Goudreau's license at the first store? I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Why didn't you use it at the first store? Yes, because he, we had went away from the counter and we just thought it looked a little odd that he asked us for ID and then we had walked away from the counter to discuss it and then walk back up, and since the picture wasn't actually me, and if he looks at it up close, he would probably be able to tell that, I'm sure, and I wasn't prepared to answer the questions of the driver's license even, that we might as well just go to a different store. Did Lyle Menendez have a valid driver's license that time? His license was suspended in California, so he did not. He had a New Jersey license. And was it made clear to you that you had to have a California driver's license to purchase a weapon of this type in California? How it was made clear? I may have asked if you could use a New Jersey driver's license. I don't remember, but somehow I knew that. Somehow he expressed to me, and I knew that he wanted a California driver's license. How long did you remain in this gun store? I no longer remember. Long enough to have a conversation with the man and long enough to talk with my brother and decide we were leaving. I'm sure it wasn't more than 20 minutes. Where did you go after you left? We went to have lunch at Bob's Big Boy. In San Diego? It was near the other store, yes. And did you eat at Bob's Big Boy? Do you remember what you did? I don't specifically remember eating, but I know I went there to have lunch, and I remember practicing Donovan Goudreau's signature on the driver's license, looking up a local address that I could give or put down when he asked me, and reviewing some of the description things on the driver's license, things like his age and so on. Why did you practice writing the name of Donovan Goudreau and look up an address in San Diego? Donovan had a very strange signature, and it was not easy to just duplicate by sight, so I participated in a couple of times. I don't remember why I looked up a local address anymore. The man at the store might have told me that, or might have just suspected that I needed a local address. I'm not sure. But for what purpose were you doing it? So that I could give when they asked me for information. Did you intend to do something with respect to the signature of Donovan Goudreau? Were you going to sign his name on anything? Yes. What were you going to sign his name on? When I bought the guns. Had you decided that you would buy the guns when you were inside Bob's Big Boys? I'm sorry, when you were inside the restaurant. I think we had decided before then. Now, did you eventually go to another gun store in San Diego? Yes. And where or what type of gun store was that? It was a Big Five in San Diego. You recognized the witness You recognized the witness that testified in this case as the sales clerk that you spoke with at the gun store? I know it was a female, but I don't specifically remember her. She talked, or you heard her testify, that she thought it was about 8 or so at night when she made this sale. Yes. Was it about 8? No. About what time was it? 3, 4, 5, sometime in the early afternoon. Did Lyle Menendez enter the store with you? Yes. And tell the jury what happened, what your recollection is from the time that you entered this Big Five. There is a parking lot in front of the store, and there's doors in front of front of the store. The gun rack was over to the right. We went over to the right, and the lady came out and started talking to us about guns. We again told her we needed it for home protection, for burglars, and so on. And she suggested one of the models behind her. She went and got a box. It was a big white box. And she opened it up and talked to us about a plug that was in the gun or was supposed to be in the gun, talked, showed us how to load it and everything about the gun, and we said we'll buy it. Now, did you suggest to her which model and type of shotgun you wanted, or did she suggest it to you? I didn't know anything about guns, so I asked her and she told me the one that's most common for the people have at home. Did she demonstrate to you how that weapon operated? Yes. Did she remove the plug? Yes. And essentially, strike that. Did you have to fill out any forms with respect to the purchase of the shotguns? Yes. How many did you ask her for? How many shotguns? Two. Both the same? Yes. When you filled out the forms, did you use any particular name for for the purchase? Donovan's name. And did you sign Donovan Goudreau's name? Yes. Did you use an address on this form? Yes. What address did you use? I don't remember the particular address. I know it was August Street. I had forgotten the address that I was supposed to remember, and so I just, on the spur of the moment, used the name and the month that it was. That was August. Where did you say you were from? Burlingame. Is that related back to the tournament that you played earlier in the year? Yeah, up in Burlingame. How did you pay for the shotguns? With money that I had. Did you remember paying cash? Yes, I remember being at the register. I don't specifically remember pulling out the cash, but I know we paid with cash. Did you buy ammunition? Yes. What kind of ammunition did you buy? Dove. They refer to it as bird load, dove shot. It was stacked up in away from the counter in a stack, so we took one of the boxes. Did you ask the lady what type of ammunition you should use? No. When you purchased the box of ammunition, did you even know what you were buying? It said ammunition for shotguns, but other than that, I didn't know. How familiar are you with the different types of shotgun rounds of shotgun loads that exist? I'm more familiar now. I didn't know anything about it at the time. Was that after listening to the testimony of the various witnesses in this case? Yeah. How long would you say you were inside the store? Half an hour. I don't remember. It was long enough for her to explain the gun and long enough to purchase it. Do you remember how it was that you carried the guns out of the store? Did they come in boxes? Yes, I think we carried them out in boxes. Do you have a specific recollection of carrying them out in boxes? No, not anymore. Did you carry both or did you just carry yours? Do you remember? I think they gave us a big bag and you carried them out. I don't think you were allowed to leave the store without them inside of a box, so I think I had to have them carried out in the box. Did you put the shotguns in any particular place in your car? In the back. How would you describe the back of your car? It was a hatchback. It was a two-door, and then there was a hatchback. My seat folded over, but it wasn't folded. I believe I put them in the back of the on the drive. I know I was reaching over, and at one point it was at the back seat, and you closed the back. What was the condition of the inside of your car? Describe it. It was a little messy. There were a lot of tennis clothes that had been piled up over time and a lot of different clothes that you change in and out on the way to tennis, either practice or at a tennis practice, and just threw them in the back of the car. So it was pretty full. What kinds of things did you have in the back of your Ford Escort other than clothes? Tennis rackets, tennis balls, tennis bags, tennis string, basically anything for playing tennis. Tape for hand tape for fingers and blisters. I'm sure I had some music tapes, I don't remember. And assorted number of things. Maybe even leftover school books, I don't remember. Where did you go when you left the store? We went back to Los Angeles. And do you know about what time it was when you arrived back in Los Angeles? No, I don't. Did you have a discussion or discussions with your brother Lyle Menendez on the way back from San Diego? Yes. And what did you talk about? We talked about more about what we had talked about before, what was happening in the family, what mom and dad might be thinking, and Lyle thought that they would probably be panicking at this point, and that just we wanted to relax so nothing would happen that day. We talked about a lot of events long before, times when he would come and talk to me about different things about what was happening with dad, just a whole number of things. It was a 2-hour drive, and I can't remember all of the things that we talked about. What purpose did you buy those shotguns for, Mr. Menendez? To protect ourselves. Did you do anything with respect to one of the shotguns on the way back to Los Angeles? Yes. What, if anything, did you do? I loaded 2 rounds into the gun. I took apart the box with the gun in it and the shells, and I loaded 2 rounds. Why did you load 2 rounds in it? Seemed like a lot. A lot for what? A lot to have if someone came at you. It seemed like a lot. My image of shotguns were, from just movies and so on, so I didn't really understand all the mechanisms and so on. It seemed like a lot to me. From what the lady told you at the Big Five, did you know that the shotgun held more than 2 rounds or was capable of holding more than 2 rounds? Oh, I knew that. I thought that it was capable of holding 7 or 8. In the trial, I learned that it holds only 6, but I knew that it held a lot more than 2. How many rounds of ammunition were in the box? Many, 10, maybe more. I don't remember a lot more than 2. How many shotguns did you load in the back on the way back? Just one. Did Lyle Menendez ask you to load his? No. And the shotgun that you loaded, was that going to be your shotgun? I suppose so. What did you do when you purchased, or when you returned? Sorry, what did you do when you returned to Los Angeles? We went home and the door was locked. Ring the doorbell. Remember, they can't have keys to their own home. Was Lyle Menendez with you? Yes. Did you have any plans for Saturday that you knew of at that time? At that time that I knew of, I suppose so. I didn't really remember that we had that we had plans until Mom reminded me of them. But I knew from earlier in the week that my parents had planned to go out on a shark fishing expedition or trip on Saturday. What time were you told that the shark fishing trip would take place? At 11 in the morning. Were you and Lyle going to go on that trip? We hadn't discussed it for many days. I didn't seriously think that they were still going on the trip. I kind of thought that there were going to be a lot of discussions. At least I was hoping that there would be, and but the as far as I knew, the trip hadn't been canceled. Did you get into your house? Rang the doorbell, and my mother came down from the bedroom and let us in. Where were the shotguns when you went to the door? In my car. And in what manner did you store them in your car? We just piled all kinds of clothes on them to hide them. Where was the car parked? We had a Sallyport area, a carport area that you drove into, and I parked my car on the purple tile. Did your mother open the door? Yes. And was there a discussion when your mother opened the door? Yes. What was it that your mother said? She told us that the shark fishing trip, we were going to be going on the shark fishing trip tomorrow. She reminded us of it and told us that it had been changed from 11 to the afternoon. Did this concern you? Yes. Did it cause you to feel any particular emotion? It just frightened me. I couldn't believe that we were still going on it, and the fact that the trip had been changed concerned me. And I remember her saying that it was dark, and after she did, my brother and I went back outside because this was a new turn of events. I wanted to talk to Lyle. Why were you worried and fearful about the shark fishing trip? I didn't like the fact that we were still going on it. I didn't know what that meant. But the idea that it had been changed from suddenly from 11 to 3 or 4, whenever it was scheduled for in the afternoon, seemed very odd to me. Always thought it just seemed odd. Why did it seem odd to you? We used to fish in New Jersey, and you just figured that fish bite at a certain time. And suddenly on Friday, my parents had changed the time from 11 to 4, and it seemed more likely that if the trip had been scheduled for 11, that that's the time the sharks bite. And suddenly it had been changed to 4, and it seemed very strange that it would suddenly change right after we had this big argument. If you remember, Jose insisted that they go at a later time. The captain wanted to take them even earlier, I think, than the noon, or 11, whatever it was. And so they pushed it like even further back, wanting to go later than they were really supposed to. And this concerned Eric. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know was planned, but I thought it was very strange, and I thought suddenly it would be changed. Thought it was strange that it would suddenly be changed. God, I cannot say words in the right order today. And I figured that, I don't know. What was your mother's demeanor, Mr. Menendez, when you got home? Just very firm. Was she friendly? No, not particularly friendly. What did you do after your mother told you about the change in the shark fishing trip? By the way, was there any other discussion about any other topic at that time with your mother? Not that I remember. And what did you do next? I went back outside and discussed this with my brother, and my brother felt that this was very strange as well. Probably something weird was going on. I told him that I didn't want to sleep in the main house, that I wanted to sleep in the guest house again, and he told me that no, I'd sleep in the main house. It would look unusual if I slept in the guest house, and it looked it would look like we thought something was going on. And so he told me that it would be all right and just to lock my bedroom and to stay in the house. Why did you understand your brother to suggest that you separate where you would stay in the house and would stay in the guest house, and he would stay in the guest house? He just wanted to give the appearance that everything normal was still happening after the big fight so that my parents would feel at ease, able to talk with us and wouldn't have to think that we were now suddenly very afraid of them and might do something like go to the police or tell people or run away. Did you still have hopes that things would work out? I had great hopes that things would work out. I thought that they might after this. I thought that they more likely would than I did after I heard what my mom said in the foyer about the fishing trip being changed. But yes. Did you do anything with your shotgun at that time? I brought it up to my bedroom. How did you transport it from your car to your bedroom? In a tennis bag that I had in the back. What kind of tennis bag? It was a Puma. I believe it was a Puma. I had so many tennis bags. It was one of the tennis bags. It was a gray tennis bag. What did you do with the shotgun when you brought it up to your room? Put it beside my bed. And did Lyle Menendez take his shotgun anywhere? Honestly, I don't remember him taking the gun from the back of the car. I know that he did. Objection calls for speculation. Sustained. That portion of the answer, I know that he did, is stricken. To your knowledge, did the other shotgun remain in your car? Objection calls for speculation, no foundation. The court says, why don't you establish it some other way, such as where did he see it next, or something like that? Mr. Levin says, where did you see it, the shotgun next? My brother's? Yes. I don't remember seeing it on Friday. I don't remember seeing it on Saturday. Had you seen it in your car on Saturday? Yes, and it wasn't there on Saturday morning, so I guess that's how I know. I didn't see his gun again until Sunday, but it wasn't there on Saturday morning. That's true. So, what about the box of ammunition? Where was that? I know that the box was still in the car. I don't know if Lyle took any of the shells with him. Your Honor, what time would you like the court to take a break? If this is good for you, this is a good place, says Mr. Levin. The court says, okay, we'll resume at 20 minutes to the hour. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume in 20 minutes and we will finish the rest next week. So I know I said when I announced, I'm back. I said that I was going to be doing these every other week and rotating them out with Delphi. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make you guys wait a whole week. So I am going to give you guys a new Menendez every Sunday and a new Delphi every Tuesday. That's my plan going forward. And then every Thursday, you either get an Innocence Lost, which is every third Friday of the month, or the rest of the Thursdays of the month. Did I say Friday? I meant Thursday. Every other Thursday of the month is my other series, The Corruption Files, where we do deep dives into all sorts of different things. So make sure you are subscribed, hit that like. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye now. That's the end of this Trial Transcripts Exposed. Thanks for following along with me. Like if you want more, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. See you next time.